Thanks so much. Can everyone hear me okay? Good. So I'm here today to talk to you about understanding your core. And obviously, we have to go over what your core means. It's certainly not a body part or last night's dinner. It's not a thought or emotion. Probably not what you studied. Certainly not what your family expects of you. And most likely, it's not your job title, because job titles tend to be far too specific, and sometimes they're just often just wrong, just plain wrong for us. So what it is what really drives you and what makes you think and act in the way that you do. It's your natural behavior and the things that you do in your everyday life. It's usually one word, and it's usually action-based. So to give you some examples, here's some examples. And knowing what's at our core, sometimes it kind of comes naturally to us, and we just find it ourselves over our lifespan, or we kind of know from when we're young. But for some of us, it's a really, really difficult thing to find out what that thing is, because often, especially in this day and age, we kind of feel like we're okay at everything. And so what really is that when it comes back down to the basic understanding of what that thing is? It's sometimes hard to find. So I suggest that we all kind of look back at our childhood. And this is me, embarrassingly, in my very ill-fitted school shirt and tie that's on a piece of elastic. And my nana so kindly knitted hand and knitted me this cardigan. But when I was kind of this age, even from this age, this was kind of when I first went to school in my first year. And even from this age, I kind of knew that I didn't mind rules and constraints. I actually quite liked them, because that gave me some barriers to be able to see how much I could work within them, but still try and push them outward a little bit. I wasn't rebellious in the slightest, because I kind of went along with those rules. And when anybody asked me when I was young, kind of, what do you want to be when you grow up? My really, really crappy answer to that was, a fashion designer. Because it was probably the only designer thing that I knew existed, the only role, the only kind of career that I knew at that time. And I certainly wasn't into clothes, as you could tell. So that it wasn't really what I wanted to be, but I knew that it had something to do with design, maybe. And I used to do things like this when I was little. So these used to be sketches, but I would draw. I got kind of really obsessed with room layouts, and I would measure everything up, and I would draw everything to scale. And maybe it was a cutout out of paper when I was younger or whatever it was, but I made the room to scale really small, and then I would go and make all of these kind of to scale things of the furniture that I could then move around and have in the room. Obviously, this was not my room when I was young, because I did not have 2 pianos. But this is something that I still do. I still do this to this day. This was my neighbors a few years ago. They had a lot of furniture, and they were trying to move things around and sort their room out. And I said, hey, I'll do this really quickly. And then, so I would do this, and we would move things around, and we would see how it felt. And my end kind of bit of advice for them was, you just have too much furniture and nothing looks good, so you need to get rid of some. But I fully believed that I could style myself. So I always had a fringe at school when I was young. And so I thought, yeah, okay, I can do whatever. Ended up cutting it. It looked like this, which wasn't too hot. But I was like, no, that won't stop me. So I ended up going to school looking like this, which then led to about 3 months of being called Michael Jackson. So definitely wasn't a stylist. But when I was young, I always knew that I did a lot better with, if I was given an instrument to be creative with, if I was given something, a brief of some sort where I could problem solve, I was a lot better with that than being given a list of things that I needed to learn or kind of memorize, facts, anything factual. I was so much better with being able to express myself. So looking at other things in my childhood, I spent time learning and teaching gymnastics and dancing, and it was any way to kind of express myself. Sports, I was horrendous at. Absolutely just didn't enjoy them at all, because I didn't enjoy anything to do with competition. Competition didn't drive me, but creativity and being able to express myself definitely did. So, yeah, it wasn't long before I kind of realized, okay, in its simplest form, I think, at my core, I'm a designer. I like to problem solve. So looking at some other people, this is Harry Roberts, or for any of you in the room who know CSS, you may know him as CSS Wizardry. This is him when he was young. When he went to school, his teachers gave him a task at school. And they said, we want you to color the square in red and the triangle in green. Harry responded to this by doing this. Now, this would infuriate the hell out of me, and I think it might have done his teacher. So she came over and she said, so Harry, why haven't you colored the square and the triangle in? And his simple response was, well, you obviously want to know whether I know my shapes and my colors. This is the quickest way of telling you that. So Harry has kind of grown up and done the same thing. It's all about time saving, and it's all about doing things in the quickest way possible for him. It's all about doing things, getting there in a way that feels good and saves time. And he now, if you know what he does now, he works for himself, he's a consultant, and he goes around the world consulting and telling companies how they can save time through code and with big code bases. So that's really done him well, and he's kind of followed him throughout life. So if we look at some other people, Mr. Bill Gates, he hacked into his school program when he was young, and it was all to do with scheduling students in classes, and he changed the code so that he was placed in classes with a disproportionate number of interesting girls. Now, if that isn't an opportunist, then, that's definitely him. And Mr. Richard Branson, he struggled at school, had dyslexia, performed poorly academically, but in his later years in school, he he realized that he was really, really good at talking with people and communicating and connecting with others. And it was likely because of that, his headmaster, when he left, said, Richard, you're either going to become very, very rich or you're going to end up in prison. So we know which way that went. So a fantastic communicator. And I think, changing things up slightly, I think if we look at Massimo Vignelli's very famous ethos, which he lived by, I believe that we can change this and make it relevant to our own cause. So what about if you aren't a designer and you're communicating much like Richard? If you can communicate one thing, you can communicate everything. So looking back at Richard Branson, for example, he has more than 200 companies in over 30 countries. It's kind of proof in itself that, and in all sorts of industries as well, there's not one specific industry. And I think that comes down to his power of communication. If you can teach one thing, you can teach everything. This should come naturally to, if you're an educator, you'd be able to educate people in anything if you know the content yourself. Same with marketing and engineering. And one final example of that, to kind of prove what I'm trying to say here, is Emma Watson. So we all know her as Hermione out of Harry Potter. And we may think, okay, she's an actress. But I don't think she is. I would suggest that she's a performer, because she uses her strength as a performer to kind of create opportunities for herself. So whether that be modelling for the likes of Burberry in London, or last year making a difference in the things that she really cares about. She's being able to use her performing skills to make a difference. So last summer she was appointed as UN Women Goodwill Ambassador. And she received a standing ovation when she delivered an address to the headquarters in New York last September. So she's really making a difference through realizing what her core is, understanding it, and capitalizing on it. So that's kind of what I'm suggesting that we should all do, because if you can understand what you are at your simplest form, you can really capitalize on it and create opportunities for yourself. So what I want to kind of do is run you through 4 mini stories, if you like, about how me understanding myself as a designer or a problem solver, how I've created opportunities for myself, or how opportunities have come my way because of my understanding of that. So the first one's self-employment, because what could be more simple than if I understand I'm a designer, okay, I will be a designer for clients, and we'll see how that goes. So the very, very short backstory to this is the rest of my talk is going to be full of these really tenuous icons, so part of the fun to keep you awake, is to try and get the relevance of these. Give you a little bit of a backstory of before I went into self-employment. I started in a web agency. And, we did a lot of small kind of flash sites at the time. And as the company grew, the clients grew larger and more corporate. We did huge information sites for the likes of the NHS, the National Health Service over in the UK, online services such as banking and utilities like water and electricity, that kind of thing. I kind of grew with the companies. I started there when there was 8 of them. When I left, there was 60, just over 3 years. So it was a huge growth, and that was really rewarding. The next thing was I moved to advertising. And we had really wealthy clients then, such as Xbox and Audi. And typically, we would take a TV campaign that was online, that was on TV, and we would take that online. And we would do a whole kind of campaign around that. And that was really kind of exciting and creating products like awareness in creative ways. And then I moved on to a branding agency in London. And here it was an interesting one. I had the hard task of removing barriers between people believing that branding was all about print and logos and typography, and that was kind of it, into, hey, we're not just digital designers, we all need to work together to make sure that this branding goes further afield. I am talking like 6-7 years ago here, so this isn't like kind of commonplace now as much, luckily, but at the time it was really difficult because I went into a group of designers who were amazing at print and kind of old school design, and still used Quark Express and loved it, and that was amazing. But so that was great, and we worked with all sorts of clients there, and I was there for another good 3 years or so. So it wasn't until, I think it's quite poignant to say, it wasn't until I'd worked across these 3 agencies for a number of years that I then felt ready to go out and work for myself. I have a lot of kind of younger people coming to me these days and saying, hey, Naomi, I think I'm just going to go, I'm going to start working on my own, I'm going to do this. My one piece of advice to them is, please don't do it too soon. Work for as many people as you can. If the job that you are in at the moment doesn't feel right, then maybe find another one for a while, but learn all that you can. And don't just learn from the things that are in your role. Try and take in from the outside of the larger perspective of the company. So take on what they're doing business-wise. Try and understand, try and get hold of their rate card, see how much they charge people. Like, understand the business side of things as well, and that will always do you well. So back then, it was 2010. I started my own studio just under my own name to try and get my own name out there. That was the thinking behind it. It worked in a way. And the opportunities that it's brought since 2010, kind of working for myself, has been fantastic. So I'm going to tell you these stories and kind of try and explain the opportunities that they brought. So the opportunities for me, personally, were the variety of client has been insane. So I've worked with a hell of a lot of, this is just a small array, and most of these people you won't have heard of, and I'm totally fine with that, because I work with these people and help them change their businesses, and that helps them day to day, and that's what's important to me. So I'm not in, working for myself to work with the biggest clients. That's actually quite a difficult thing to do when you work in a small studio for yourself as well, is to get those big clients. Usually you need the big agency names to get those. But for me, it's all about helping one-on-one, helping people, and helping do better through design. So I've been lucky enough to work with a whole ton of charities over in the UK, and that's been really, really rewarding. And there's a whole array of kind of clients that I won't go through, but the variety of clients has been great. And the type of project, the variety of project has been amazing. So from going from kind of agency life where I was kind of in one role and usually only really did one or two things, I was kind of, I'm running my own ship, so kind of did everything. So we've done things from, branding projects through to print and advertising, really nice to get back to some print work. Websites, some of these, these are really old. But websites, online learning tools, this is a really fun one called Accountancy for accountancy students. Really fun stuff and really challenging things. App design, And the all-important thinking behind, I think it's always important to show this, the planning, the UI, the UX, the understanding and planning out of things, that's really, really important and really enjoyable, so challenging, going back to those design problem-solving roots. And yeah, simple things like direct marketing and printed goods, going back to kind of the basic. And the variation has literally been fantastic, and it really does keep me on my toes kind of creatively and challenges me continually, which is brilliant. So working my own way, kind of, here's a difficult slide for you in terms of icons. So first up is kind of like, I can be really honest with people about whether I think that I'm right for the job. So working for myself, it's great. Yeah, working for someone else is, sometimes you take on work and you do projects where you're like, probably not the best designer for this. I can tell someone that. If someone comes to me and says, hey, you know, I'm doing this thing and I think you'd be a really good fit. And I say, oh, why? And I'll challenge it and I'll ask them why. Because sometimes you know that you're probably not the right person for that job. And I'm quite willing to put my hand up and say, I don't think I'm the right person, but I will help you find the right one. And that's really great, because you can just be really honest. And I can be the client's one contact, which is fantastic coming from agency life where things go through account managers, production managers, all of these other realms of people. I used to always fight when I was in agencies to be in meetings. I would like, no, I have to be in this meeting. I have to speak one-on-one. I have to understand the brief from the client. And I would fight always to be part of that. Now I don't have to fight. I can just speak to them on phone, on Skype, whatever, email, whatever we end up doing. And that's great because they know that they're speaking to the one person who's actually doing the work as well. So that's great. I set my own timescales and expectations. I set my own costs. And I'm ultimately in control of keeping my clients happy. So if someone's not happy, I know who to blame, which is great. And more freedom. I have definitely had more freedom to travel. And I don't have to work to a typical 9 to 5, which is huge for me. I am terrible in the mornings, like really, really bad. I can't switch on creativity. I can't do it this afternoon either, apparently. I can't switch on creatively at all in the mornings. And usually I'm much better at night. And I'll be better at kind of like 11, 12, midnight, 1 a.m. It's fine. If you set your own timescales and expectations and you say, hey, so I'm not going to be working a normal day, but we'll put meetings in here and here and here, and you'll have the work by here. They don't care when you're working, and that's great. So it works for me. And a bit of a funny one to talk about, because not a lot of people do, is I've had the opportunity to make more money working for myself. And that comes with a huge caveat of it is harder, and you will obviously spend a lot more time and your own money and own effort and emotion, all sorts of things. But I have had the potential. I have, not recently, which you'll find out why later, but, in the early days of me setting up my own thing, I was making more money than when I worked for an agency. But as I say, massive caveat on that one. But I think that it's good to share. So, second up was founding a product, or very nearly. So in late 2010, it started with this guy, Maciej. He's a Romanian developer, absolute genius. And he is always challenging software and trying to better things that are out there. But top of his list was an easy-to-use tool to create and output CSS animation. Now, this was back in 2010, so there was only a couple of things starting to come out on the market, and they weren't particularly good, they weren't strong, and they probably weren't thinking big enough. They might have just been an open-source project that one developer had done, which is great. Always, a big fan of that. But there was definitely a market there, and there was something that was needed because obviously the kind of iPads and everything had come out and Flash was dying. So it was a really, really kind of poignant time. And Maciej introduced himself to me and two others at a conference back in 2010. We'd literally just met him, hadn't met him before, and we were so astounded by his work and this demo that he had created and his motivation for changing this huge thing that we immediately wanted to help him get it to market. So this was our core team. This is who we spoke to. We spoke to myself and Andy Clark and Dan Rubin. And yeah, we immediately kind of jumped on this. After we'd met with him, we stayed in touch. We put together boards. We were kind of like, right, let's do this thing. We then pulled in Alex Hunter, who, if you don't know, used to work for Virgin, and he's an extremely intelligent guy and fantastic. He also does a lot of investing into startups and new businesses. So he came on as our advisory role, and he was amazing. And then we had the guys from Ordered List, Steve Smith and John, and then unfortunately 2 weeks later they got acquired by GitHub, so that didn't work out, but that wasn't going to stop us. We would find another development team who were equally as great to support Macheya, and we would do this thing. So the goal was to build an incredibly easy to use animation tool that would take all of the hard work out of doing things. We fully believed in the product and its potential to really, really change the state of immersive content online, making it accessible, fully readable to all browsers, including the ones that couldn't render the animation itself. We'd serve up something else that was equally as great in telling the story. And the animations themselves were built really simply using semantic HTML. And using really ordered lists. That's all it was. We even had a whole new, because of my advertising background, we had a whole new advertising standard planned to replace Flash entirely and offer advertising agencies an accessible standard to work to. So we had really, really big plans for this thing. And we did demos. So Andy Clark in 2011 took this demo out to a number of events across the States. And yeah, we use them at conferences to kind of gauge reaction. It's really important to know if there is a market out there and know if you're thinking along the same lines as a lot of other designers and developers in the industry are. And they certainly were. Like, we got really, really fantastically great feedback. This was all back in 2000, well, it was the end of 2010 when we were putting this stuff together, but at the beginning of 2011, this stuff wasn't really being done because it was all done in the browser. It was all it was all accessible and just simple but fantastic. Macheya and myself did another one that was very similar. This is really glitchy because it's just a recording of it playing live in the browser in 2011, which obviously trying to play it now and recording it it's not the greatest. But we caused excitement and interest, and people wanted to use the product, and it was great. We'd proved its worth, which was amazing. So next, we got to the point of filing patents, and we had our investor demos together. This was to raise capital for it. We knew that we couldn't do it without a little bit of money behind us. We had everything ready that we needed to take that leap into making animatable, which is what it was called, the service that we wanted it to be and what everyone else needed and wanted from it. So what was the problem? This is the Neely part. We realized, or 3 out of the 4 of us realized, we really, really wanted to use this thing, but we didn't actually want to make it. There was 3 of us who were working for ourselves, working with clients, lots of great clients, and I had only really been doing it for a few months myself as well. And we wanted to see this thing on the market, but we kind of realized, and it was really, really hard to come to terms with it, but we realized we don't really want to do it because it means giving up everything else that we're currently doing and concentrating on this 24/7. And if we are going to take investment for this, then that is what we have to do. We have to. This is it. And it could have completely changed our lives. We could have made a fortune from it and made sure that the product was superb in every way. But there was something there for 3 of us that were, it's just maybe not what we want to do right now. And our cause enabled us to know that we could do it. And that we had the skills to make it a reality. So that was great to be able to realize that we could do it. But building a product, it just wasn't right for us back then. So we decided not to take it any further. It was a really difficult decision, and I quite honestly felt like it was failure to me and complete lost potential because there was so much potential behind it. And it was really, really hard. and I took it pretty difficultly as well. It was a difficult thing to come to terms with. But I had to remind myself that, okay, all was not lost. We did meet great people, passionate people, seeing the kindness in everyone kind of giving advice, feedback, and giving their time to us was fantastic. I learned a lot about investment and funding, which I wouldn't have known before. And the biggest thing for me, myself, was realizing the major difference between client work and building a product. There's two entirely different things, which seems obvious to most people, but back then we're kind of like, yeah, this is great. Oh, right, yeah. There's a huge difference. And the lesson that I took from this was just be true to yourself. As much as my core enabled me to know that, yeah, let's get excited about this, this is amazing, let's do it. As much as it allowed me to do that, being true to myself was kind of that little bit more important, because if I'd just gone along with it because I thought that was the right thing to do, then it could have ended up really, really messy, and I could have let a lot of people down. Not just, our small team, I could have let all of you in the room down by not sticking with this thing that I'd started. So I think it's really important to be true to yourself, and if something doesn't feel right, then hold your hand up and be okay with it, and try and find your own piece of it, even if you're not at the time. So next up is slightly on a happier note, being hired for photography. So back in 2011, it was 2011, it seems like a decade ago. But in October 2011, it was actually my birthday, Instagram came out. And I'd never ever considered myself as a photographer. Never had a proper camera. Never spent much time with it. Always admired photography so much. Admired it. Loved other people's work. But thought, I wouldn't even know where to start. It's not for me. But when Instagram came out and kind of changed the scene of, smartphone photography, I was like, oh, I kind of like this. And I just saw it as a designer would see it, through designer's eyes. So I saw this square canvas, this new square canvas as it was at the time, as a brief. And so I obviously thought about it in terms of thirds. I thought about it in terms of, I took a picture and something was meant to be in the corners, I would make sure that they were exactly in the corners. And if something felt like it should be in the middle, I would make sure that it was smack bang in the middle. So I'd end up spending a lot more, I'd spend more time, processing these images than taking them themselves. But I found that I really enjoyed it. And something really weird started to happen. Like, I got a lot of followers, and quite quickly in the early days of Instagram, and I didn't really know why this was happening. And I honestly, to this day, just think it was still because I took no pictures of myself, of my animals, my kids, or my food. I honestly think that is the only reason why. I do think that the guys at Instagram did put me forward as a suggested user for a while to follow, probably because of those things, so that probably helped a hell of a lot. But other than that, I literally have no clue. So at a good point, like last year, I was at about 180,000 followers. And that to me is just insane. Just, a designer who's never really picked up a camera before. So it was just incredible. And then something even stranger started to happen. I started to get contacted by advertising agencies and marketing companies who usually they will be the ones who contact you rather than Red Bull themselves, for instance. And they started asking me to do sponsored work for them. And I was like, ooh, okay, what does that involve? What do I do? So one of the first ones was Red Bull got contact, who they were running a really kind of nice campaign. I don't drink Red Bull, and I'm not, a massive fan of energy drinks. They're not the greatest for us, but Red Bull as a brand, I have massive respect for. So that's the only reason that I kind of said yes to this project was they really, really help support art and design in a number of ways. So that was the reason for me that I kind of said yes to this one. And they were bringing out 3 new flavors, and they asked they got 3 editors kind of together, and they wanted us to represent these 3 flavors in anything to do with those. So these were some of the images that I took for them. And they were just hashtagged with blue, red, or silver. But the cool thing was that what they were offering was they bought up a whole load of billboard space all across kind of London and the rest of the UK. And if you was to hashtag with these things, then they would, not only would they send you a can of the stuff in the post, they would also give you billboard space. So it was kind of cool, because at that time it was 2011 or early 2012, and it's like, yeah, I can see, like, people can see their images on a physical billboard, and that felt nice. So it got a lot of traction. It went down really well. And then Tourism Ireland got in touch. Now, this was a fantastic job for me, because being able to help a tourism board create more immersive content about going and visiting a place, that felt really good. So Northern Ireland, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, especially around the Londonderry area, it's beautiful up there. It's absolutely beautiful. But because of the issues that they've had and all of the conflicts that they've had over there, it's difficult. It's still, it still sits with people. You think of IRA, that they're having constant kind of battles with tourism and getting people there. So to be able to go over there and actually show the beautiful side and still keep that kind of, the brutal kind of side in there as well, the reminder of it, was fantastic. And I just felt stupidly lucky, like really, really lucky. Like, these guys were like, yeah, just come over for a few days, we'll get you a car and it's all expenses paid. And I'm like, really? I just take photos on my phone. And then they got a really lovely photographer who came to, they sent me to a food market, and they kind of had me in all sorts of different places in between all the food, and I was on the paper, or like a couple of local papers, and I was just like, okay, okay, I'm just taking photos. But it was brilliant, because hopefully it helped them, and raised a smile, and I was doing some good. Another one was Vitamin Water. This one wasn't so much of a feel-good one for me, but this was just I kind of liked it because I tried to change things up a bit. So this was all about unexpected everyday color. So because of that, I decided to try and do these color tiles where I would pull out the color of this. Oh, God. So as soon as I started this, I was like, oh, why did I do this? Because to process these on a phone, because I had this stupid... When Instagram first started, I had this stupid thing of, right, I'm never, ever going to import, a picture from my proper camera, Canon or anything in. It all has to be on my phone. And everything that I process, I have to do it all through apps. I have to do it all on my phone. I can't take it off the phone because that's stupid. So, yeah, doing something like this, don't do it. Just use the laptop. It's much easier. But, yeah, it was fun. I kind of had fun with this one. So that hence me kind of sharing it with you. But my absolute... most incredible experience has to be with the Le Méridien, which is a kind of high-end hotel chain worldwide. These guys came to me and said, hey, Naomi, do you want to come to Paris and do a 72-hour kind of experience of Paris through your eyes? I'm like, yeah, okay. So, yeah, they were amazing. I was like, incredible. So, trying to capture things like the Eiffel Tower, but from a different perspective, all sorts of things. And I had so much fun. It was great. Again, they put together a little bit of an itinerary. They've kind of said, you should check this out, that out. And it was amazing. And then I didn't really think that it could get any better, but it did, because they then got in touch and said, hey, Naomi, we really want to put your photography up behind in Le Méridien Étoile, which is like the Le Méridien it was like the first one, and it's in the center of Paris. And they were like, we really want to put your photography up behind reception. Is that okay? And I'm like, it's more than okay. And can I help you in terms of how you hang it and where you do it? And I gave them a number of kind of ways of showing it, and we chose one. And it's hanging up there, and that's incredible. And then it got even better because this happened. So they were like, hey, Naomi, we want to bring you back again, and we want to do a gallery showing and invite all of our most important guests and a few others and this and that. And I'm like, a gallery showing of my photography? Yeah, okay. Amazing. So, and this was all just because I saw the canvas as a brief. And I know that there was some fortunate things in there of, I was on Instagram from day one of it, being open to the public, and probably putting it forward as a suggested user for a while. But this was incredible to me. I felt so fortunate. And to be able to see kind of photography of all things, and people kind of paying attention to it, and it being in a show was just so incredible. And yeah, so seeing it as a brief, I honestly believe, being a designer and seeing that as a brief completely, the square as a brief, just created these opportunities for me. And I just feel very, very fortunate for it. So the fourth and final mini-story is, I'm going to have to try and rush through this, and of course it's the biggest one, is this is what I've been doing most recently, and this has been designing a new business. So really quickly, I thought a lot a couple of years ago about what would be my legacy apart from drinking too much wine, because everyone will say I drink too much wine. So I was like, what is it going to be? I started looking at my surroundings and kind of realized I was as much into interior space, going back to as a kid, you know, of like designing rooms and stuff and layouts. I was as much into that and product design as I was digital work. I thought about my lifetime crush of old buildings and places that were derelict and being left alone, and they needed a bit of love and attention. Thought about my frustrations with online shopping and the fact that when I kind of receive something through the post, it's that kind of half excited feeling, but also disappointment when you open it, because you probably ordered it days or weeks ago, and it's kind of not really the same experience. And the plight of our high streets over in the UK, it's been really, really difficult the last few years, because the supermarket chains have just been taking over everything. And independents are closing, and the big chain stores are just taking over everything. And that's a really, really hard and sad thing to see, especially culturally for a city. Many cities have kind of struggled with it over there. So I kind of had it. I had my big idea. I was going to open a physical shop, something completely different to what I was used to doing. But I would take advantage of being a designer rather than a retailer, because who better to challenge something than someone who's not from retail? So I was going to build I was going to offer independents an outlet to put them at the forefront rather than the retailer at the forefront. And I would try and create a business that offered them everything that they would want from a stockist. And it wouldn't be a small shop, because this was my legacy after all, and it probably wouldn't be just one, but that's where I'll start. And yeah, I did it. So in 2013, I actually founded Whosit and Whatsit. But I started really small and did a number of pop-up shops and did a lot of research about buildings and business models and all sorts of things. But it's kind of become a whole thing now. So the business model itself, trying to explain that quickly, is usually a wholesale model. As you'll probably all be aware, the designer sells something to the retailer at a wholesale price. Sometimes it's really sad, and that goes through his cost price, plus a little bit, because the designer just wants to get their stuff in a store, wants to get it selling. But then the retailer sells it onto the customer for however much the recommended retail price, or sometimes they don't even listen to that and sell it a lot higher, and the retailer keeps all of that money. So challenge-wise, for Whosit and Whatsit, I redesigned the model. So the designer pays the retailer us £30 a month. And then the designer, obviously we do all of the hard work and we sell everything, but ultimately the customer and the designer are much better off, because the designer sets their own retail price, the customer pays that retail price, and it just goes straight back to them. We manage all the money and we take everything for everyone, we pay everyone at the end of every month. But that's pretty much, in short, how it works. And this was the mammoth building that I took on. This was the first day I got the keys. Yeah, it was a pretty scary prospect, but I'd done a lot of research, and it was a great amount of space for the money and all sorts of things. Inside, it was a kebab shop on the ground floor, so it needed quite a lot of work. This is just the ground floor. I'm only showing the ground floor. The rest of it is, it's something else. This was it during, so we kind of had some billboards up at the time. This was when I got the top half of the building done and nothing at the bottom yet. Internally, it was just a massive amount of rip-out work. This is my stepdad, who helped me out unbelievably. And we were lucky enough, it's a 17th century building. So all I wanted to do, going back to my love of old buildings, was to try and bring that back and try and show that off. It's another huge pull, obviously, to get customers through the door and get people looking at independence, work and products, was to try and do that. And we were so lucky that it had all been hidden, but it was all still there. So this is how it looks today. It opened in December just last year, and this is pretty much the only time I've been out. So thank you all. So yeah, I've been kind of like imprisoned in this building since December, but it's great. No, I do love it, and it looks like this inside. So it's been a lot of work. But it's had an amazing it's had amazing feedback. Customers love it. The designers who are involved love it. Most of the designers are doing really well through our model, which I'm so proud of, because I don't really see myself as a business person. I see myself as a designer. So to be able to understand that, okay, no, I can change. I can turn that to designing a business model is fantastic. Really briefly, we pop one of these in everyone's bag, so it's all about the who behind the what, hence the name. So we celebrate the designers, we celebrate where they're from, a little bit of their story. We have some amazing designers in. What I'm trying to do is bring international design to this city. Hopefully in the future, we might have one in Toronto. But hopefully, I'm trying to bring international design to local, rather than local to local, because there's so many fantastic local to local places where I am in Newcastle. But there isn't so much of the international and pulling that in. So we're really, really lucky in terms of the designers that we have in. There's some designers in here you may know. Hopefully there's others that you will never have heard of. Obviously Jessica you have. Luckily enough to have Jessica with us. These guys are based in Scotland and the UK, and they do the most amazing kids wear. And yeah, it's fantastic to be able to give people a storefront and be able to celebrate these people. And I feel great because when I'm talking to customers, I don't have to talk about me, I'm talking about other people, and that's beautiful and really, really easy for me. So we got the ground floor finished. I'm really, really happy to say about a week ago we got the first floor finished, and we're hoping to open the second floor as well to the public, but having to pause because it's costing a lot of money. So we're pausing here, and we're going to run these two floors as retail, but also use it for event space. So some of you may know Al Wardle, who runs NE40, fantastic brand. They turned 7. We just had their birthday party the other Saturday on our first floor. So it was like the first time that people were coming through the door, I was still sticking the fire exit signs on the fire exits. It was that close. But we did it, and I'm still alive, so that's good. And it was a really, really great night. And that was like a really fantastic time for me to be able to say, okay, we can host events for designers too. We can offer, gallery showing space, product launch space. It's a really, really good feeling. We've got workshops coming up. James White said yes. Thank you, James. So yeah, we've got a couple of workshops coming up, and more being booked in all the time. So we're really, really excited about that. And being able to bring someone like James over to Newcastle upon Tyne, which is a pretty small city in the UK, is fantastic. And I'm just hoping that we can offer more and more for our designers and for the general public, and introducing the two. And literally just put the new version of the website live yesterday, which don't ever do this. If you're at a conference, don't put a website live at the same time. It's really not a good idea. So don't look at it too hard, because there's loads of holes. And if you want to submit to sell with us, that's not working right now. But yeah, it will be. Just check it out in a few days after the conference. That'll be good. So yeah, time to wrap up. So a lot of people say, Naomi, isn't this just a lot of hard work? And I need to pause right here and say, yes, it is. But I am so, so grateful to all of the friends and family that I have who have helped support me through this, because I literally could not have done it without them. These are just a few pictures that I reminded myself to take of the process, and some of my amazing friends and family that have helped me along the way. But seriously, if I've taken one thing from all of this, is you can't do everything on your own. If you're building a business that you want to become your legacy in something that's so huge, like what we've done with this space, just appreciate the people around you, because they've just been incredible. Even Moni the dog, she's there quite regularly. But in all seriousness, yes, it is hard work, but I honestly believe challenge is such a key to staying passionate, because a lack of variation can be so uninspiring. Being happy, like if you see your work as a job, just drop that job, do something else. Because we're so lucky in this industry that we don't have to do something that we hate. So if you're unhappy, then make sure that you get happy again. And adding to your skills, like if you imagine if you try out all of these different things that you can do because of your core, then just think about how those overall skills could then improve your work ethic. And again, this talks all about furthering your opportunities. That's the main thing to take away. So today's question is, what's your natural way of tackling things, i.e. what's at your core? Because the title of the talk, obviously, is Understanding Your Core, but the thing to take away is that it opens a whole world of opportunity if you can do that. Thank you. I don't think we've got time for Q&A, but if anyone, please, I'm really happy now because I can have a drink, I can have fun. So yeah, come and see me, find me, ask me anything, tell me I'm an idiot, do whatever you like. Thank you.